things to do with Unit 1. We've got the unit notes here, which is again your critical source for the course. I did mention, and maybe I'll mention it one more time, within these notes there are practice questions. It's a really good idea to do those practice questions. So I'll just sort of make that hint one more time. Again, this first page here gives you a good overview of the structures, the large scale structures, you know, the brain and the spinal cord. That'd be your central nervous system. And then your peripheral nervous system out here, ultimately. Now, there's, of course, way more details than that, but that's a big overview. This video here on neurons is a really good one to watch. All the videos we put in the note package are good to watch. Again, I would suggest that when you watch them, you have your own little notepad and you basically take some key notes with them. Okay, I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit to about, I think it's about page 3 here. Oops, I want to scroll down. Sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic. So basically, your sympathetic nervous system is going to be your fight or flight, and your parasympathetic is going to be your rest and digest. To kind of summarize it very quickly for you. I mean, ultimately, these are autonomic, so they're automatic, right? So if I suddenly somehow appear in front of you with a ghost outfit on, you're gonna go whoo, right? And that's the fear response. And think about what happens when we're in fear. What happens to our heart rate, right? But actually, our skin, blood flow to our skin goes down because our body is thinking, oh my gosh, there's a giant bear or a giant alligator that's going to chop me in half, right? And so that's the sympathetic. That's you don't have to think about that. You don't have to go, oh, there's a bear. I think I need my heart to get going. Come on, get going, right? Versus parasympathetic is the opposite, right? It's the rest and digest. It's the calm down. It's the, okay, you've been running all day. You've been running from bears all day. Finally, you're in a cave. Okay, hide in the cave. And then your body finally gets to slow down. It has to slow down at some point. We're not a machine. So again, this is some pretty quick overviews, but you know, that's some important concepts there. I want to jump ahead a little bit more again here. Oh yeah, right here. So in terms of if you're getting a nerve stimulation, so let's say, you know, you just take a little pin and prick your hand, and don't do this at home, and you're going to move your hand away really fast. It's going to be your sensory neurons or sensory receptors first. So you know, like in our eyes, it's our cones that detect color, right? And also the cones are for color, the rods are for black and white. Your rods actually do the peripheral vision. Anyway, it's always your sensory receptors. Then the sensory neuron takes the message, right, to my spinal cord, basically first, to the interneurons. And interneuron means inside my head or inside my spinal cord. And then the spinal cord, if you've touched something super hot, your spinal cord will actually tell your hand to move, which is really cool, right? I'm just going to let in another one of the classmates here. So once that message hits the interneurons, either your spinal cord literally makes a decision for you and says, oh, move my hand now, or the message goes up to the brain and you go, oh, I'm petting a cat, or oh, I think I finally found my Cheerios. And you know, because you know, sometimes you're hungry in the morning and you pick stuff up off the floor and you go, look, I got a Cheerio. And I don't do that, but I just thought I'd make that up. So okay, I make stuff up all the time. What else do we want to see here? I want to jump a couple more pages. Oh yeah, so again, sample questions with videos. If you haven't had a chance to go through these, go through them. I would also suggest you have a little notepad as well while you're looking at these, because these show you some of the thinking, and these are very close to the types of questions we give you in a course. This next slide, oh yeah, neuron structure. Again, I'm not going to go through all of these, but you need to understand, and of course, what is a neuron? I mean, they're super, super small cells, right? Like highly specialized cells that are capable of keeping a negative charge inside. So when they're at rest, right? When a neuron is at rest, it's got a high negative charge inside, and then outside a high positive charge, basically. And they use active transport, they use energy to do that. And neurons are they're like in a rubber band waiting to fire, right? And they have potential. That's why we call it the action potential of the neuron. But again, you need to know all these structures, especially the myelin. You know, the myelin in a neuron really, really helps your, and not all your neurons are myelinated, but the ones that are, they're very fast. And because it's able to jump over the little gaps there. I think I know we've got some great pictures of that. Let me just see here. Yeah, there's your myelin sheath. You know, here's the neuron, the impulse would travel from neuron to neuron. I mean, in your brain right now, I'm talking, you can see me, you might be taking some notes. You're using millions and literally billions of neurons right now that are talking to each other, right? And ultimately, when one neuron is fired, it's usually another neuron or maybe a sensory receptor is fired at. And then the impulse travels, and when it's myelinated, the impulse is actually able to jump. It travels a lot faster. And actually, as we do sports skills or even typing and stuff, our neurons get basically better and better myelin. It gets healthier, essentially. I mean, it's why it's good to think. It's why it's good to do, you know, some physical activity, because our body needs that, right? To kind of, I mean, even our neurons are kind of like a muscle. Oh yeah, here's again that idea of the myelin sheath, and essentially the impulse is able to jump between these what are called the nodes of Ranvier. And you know, you'll read about all these details, and you probably have already. But you'll notice here, basically the neuron is at rest here, and then right there, that's where the impulse is. It's traveling through like a wave. The impulse travels through the neuron, and essentially what's happening here, right here, where you see it's all positive, sodium has flowed in, and that's called depolarization. So that's a really, really key concept. You know, how does a neuron fire? And it's something called depolarization. Now, by the way, I'm going over a lot of things here. So the real idea is to give you an idea of some key stuff. But my hope is that after this, okay, you head back to the notes and basically start going through, reading through, making your own notes. But indeed, this concept of an action potential is critical. Like it's understanding how we work, really, right? Like how does my brain work? How do my hands work? You know, how do I feel stuff? How do I see stuff? And it boils down to the neuron. And of course, a whole bunch of them link together to make us think, or a whole bunch of them link together to allow me, oh, look at Phil, he's dancing. But yeah, anyway, that's a key thing. There's a whole teaching video if you had a chance, and if you have to watch it twice. I mean, and this is actually Daryl. He's an excellent instructor. That's one of our teachers that's filmed this one, and it's 20 minutes. It's focused, but I would watch it, hit pause, take notes, press play. You know, just watch it detailed, because Daryl, he's really good. I mean, he knows this stuff. Animation on action potential. This is critical. Let's keep rolling though through here bit by bit. Want to go, oh yeah, there. This graph, this is a graph that you need to understand. I mean, basically, it is showing you, here's a neuron at rest. It's got a strong negative charge. Ultimately, inside of our neurons, we have these large molecules that are negatively charged, and they can't get out of the neuron. And so that's actually why it ends up with an overall negative charge. But they still have to use pumping action to basically pump sodium out and potassium in, so that positive sodium is pumped out, right? And essentially, if you start stimulating, because I think we kind of know this, right? Like even right now, can you feel all of your clothes? Like, not really, right? Like after a while, your neurons don't fire like crazy. Because if they did, if our neurons fired like crazy, like if every stimulation came in, our brain, it would be an explosion. There would be noises, we would feel everything. So our neurons are normally inhibited, right? Like especially when we focus, when we're focusing, we suddenly we don't hear stuff. We're just hearing one thing. Anyway, the point being is that, see, essentially there's a threshold that you can stimulate a neuron and it does nothing, and then boom, it fires, it depolarizes. There's really two key things that happens. It's called depolarization and then repolarization, right? Because the neuron needs to get back and be ready, right? Because a neuron's job, whether it's one of the receptors or whether it's one of the sensory neurons or whether it's one of the interneurons or whether it's a motor neuron, it needs to be ready not just to fire once, but to fire again. But it also needs to kind of overshoot here so that it doesn't fire backwards, because it could actually go backwards and basically it wouldn't work, or you would be whatever, your muscles would start spasming, or they would lock up. And also the hyperpolarization that happens here keeps the neuron from firing too fast. And again, that whole idea of a spasm, basically. And we've all experienced that. Sometimes, kind of our muscles twitch and stuff. And essentially what's happening is they're not hyperpolarizing properly, the neurons. And it's kind of, and this would also probably occur with an epileptic seizure and stuff, when just the neurons are just going out of control in the brain. Okay, just kind of continuing on and some key stuff here that I wanted to kind of highlight for you. Let's jump ahead a couple pages in the note package. Again, we've got the myelin, and it's actually a special cell that in fact grows on top of or with the neuron, called the Schwann cell, but that's the myelin sheath. And look at that, it's showing you how the neurotransmission or the action potential literally jumps there, right there where you see the positive. It's depolarized. It's gone from negative to positive and flowing along. In multiple sclerosis, the myelin sheath starts to degrade. Basically, it looks like what happens in MS is our immune system attacks. So it's like an autoimmune disease. And our body starts to attack itself and basically eats away the myelin. It's a terrible disease, that MS, just terrible. Okay, I'm going to jump ahead a bit. Oh, yeah, you can see some more practice questions that are in here. So these are really good to go through. And scrolling down to this. Oh, yeah, this is really important too. So between neurons, so we're at the end, because obviously, in our brain, there's literally about 86 billion neurons in our brain. And they have to talk to each other. They have to send signals to each other. Literally, if I put something in front of the screen here, I know the video is kind of small, but if I hold that up, boom, you right away, you went, oh, salt. So there's a pathway in your brain that basically says salt. And ultimately, it's a whole bunch of neurons, millions of them, talking to each other, sending messages. So to be more scientific, sending impulses across. The nerve impulse comes to the end, and basically what you want to make sure to read through here is the process where we're sending neurotransmitters. A key one is acetylcholine, and that acetylcholine then stimulates the next neuron. Now, in something like Alzheimer's, one of the problems with Alzheimer's is the person's nerve cells, neurons, aren't creating enough acetylcholine anymore. And so it's harder and harder for their neurons to send messages. And that's why someone with Alzheimer's, again, it's a terrible disease. Someone with Alzheimer's, they're having trouble thinking, speaking, or remembering because that acetylcholine, and that's just one of the reasons. Alzheimer's is a very complicated disease, but it's one of the key reasons going on. So yeah, you're going to definitely want to go through this section here. Obviously this whole note package. What do I want to jump? I want to jump again. Oh yeah, this again, summarizes some key neurotransmitter chemicals, some of the ones that excite, but also inhibit. So our body can inhibit, and this is important so that we don't get overstimulated, essentially. Our neurons can be inhibited and basically shut down, which is also a cool process. So yeah, you're going to want to focus on those neurotransmitters there. Oh yeah, and again, it's another picture. So obviously acetylcholine is pretty important. This is showing you, again, this is a super zoomed in, right? Like think of how small a cell is. Here, plunk. A single hair, I know we can see a single hair, there about 10 cells would fit across. So that's how small a cell is. Okay, this is zoomed in even smaller. Like this is a tiny, tiny, super microscopic area, right? Between two neurons. This tiny gap here is so small, and yet it's needed for us to send these chemicals across to tell the next neuron, hey, fire, go, you send the message. You tell everybody what's going on. I just saw a dinosaur or whatever, right? Okay, oh, I want to jump way ahead now. Go here to this page there. Yeah, the brain. Okay, overall, this is actually a good one. It's showing you frontal lobe, temporal lobe, because you're studying in this course, you know, the eyes. Well, that's back here in the occipital lobe, right? So if someone has a vision problem, because one of the goals of this, guys, is so you can understand your own health, healthy your friends, healthy your family, but also to become a healthcare professional. I mean, most students who take this course are interested in nursing, practical nurse. I've had students who are interested in becoming doctors. So, you know, someone, oh, I'm having trouble seeing. Well, could be, might not be, but could be a problem with the occipital lobe, right? Because that's where vision is processed. Could be a problem with the lens, you know, right at the front of the eye. And really part of the course is wanting to make sure, okay, does the student know, okay, when light enters the eye, what happens? Okay, it's going to go back to the cones, you know, colored light to the receptors, and then it's going to go down the optic nerve, down the optic nerve to the occipital lobe to an interneuron that's then going to process and say, oh, look, a dinosaur, or whatever it is that you saw. By the way, if you start seeing dinosaurs, there's something going on. So, because they're dead. Anyway, occipital lobe for vision, temporal lobe for hearing. So these are two key things in this unit, right, in the course, is learning about the structure of the eye, learning about the structure of the ear, and of course the structure of the brain. The cerebellum, which is down here, this particular model doesn't highlight it. This is our fine motor control, right? And the cerebellum means tiny brain. And this tiny brain here, basically, if you're typing on a keyboard or doing any sports skill, it's partially this. It's also your arms and legs, like literally the neurons in our arms and our legs. When we do sports a lot, they can just do the movement. I think most of you might know this. If you play sports, your body just kind of moves sometimes, and it's because it just knows what it's doing. You almost don't have to think about it. Okay, so yeah, brain, key stuff on the brain. And there's a bunch more, but I'm going to jump ahead again. I'm going to go to this page. Right there. Oh, yeah. So sympathetic, parasympathetic. I think I was talking about that way back at the beginning, but the sympathetic, fight or flight response. So this is in our autonomic. Both of these are autonomic, meaning automatic, right? I mean, be crazy if we had to think about being scared. Oh, look, a bear. Oh, I should be scared. I mean, you literally, and actually our ancestors were probably chased by all kinds of giant scary creatures, right? So we generally, you know, if we run into a giant thing or a really spiny thing, we do have a fear response. And then of course parasympathetic, simply resting and digesting. There's more details than that, but you're going to want to make sure you're clear on those two systems, because there might be a question on that. Okay, there's lots of questions though too. Okay, want to jump ahead. Oh, again, there's some practice questions with a video that explains. So really key stuff that we've got in here to help you so you do well on the self-test, but also the unit test. So make sure you go through those. Gonna go to this one. Oh yeah, so structure of the eye. You got to know this stuff. I mean, ultimately, there's there's a receptor. It's the same. It's the same for even your finger, your eye, your ear. There's a receptor. There's a sensory neuron. There's an interneuron, and then generally there's a motor neuron involved. I mean, there's not always a movement or whatever, but often it's that exact pathway. Receptor, sensory, interneuron, motor neuron, especially if we, and this isn't sharp, but if I accidentally touch something sharp, that'll be a reflex arc, right? Like a reflex action, but it will still follow that pathway, that exact pathway of receptor, sensory neuron, interneuron in the spinal cord, and if it's really sharp, the spinal cord will actually say move. It'll do the thinking, and that's also why we call the brain and spinal cord the central nervous system. It really is our core. It's the core of us. It's not only your noodle upstairs here that does the thinking. Your spinal cord can actually can make decisions. It just doesn't tell you about it. It just doesn't. 58 I wanted to jump to because I think 58 here is the ear structures. So, your auditory canal, your tympanic membrane. So again, we really want you to understand the pathway, say the path that light takes, or the path, and that example that I gave of a reflex arc, that path, or the path that sound would take, right? So sound waves would obviously travel through here, hit what we normally call the eardrum, then the ossicles, right? There's 4 little bones. These are the smallest bones in your body. I mean, this is cool stuff, right? Like this just blows your mind. And then from there, it's your cochlea. This is actually where your hearing organ actually is inside of there. And then it's your auditory nerve. And of course, think about the lobe in the brain, right? The temporal lobe would actually say, oh, I just heard, I don't know, whatever. I heard a crow. And again, it sounds like that, like a crow. You have a pathway in your brain for a crow. You have a pathway in your brain for, I don't know, an ambulance or whatever. And you just immediately, you hear it and you go, especially songs that we really like, right? That we've listened to a lot. Even if you hear a little bit of it, your brain will go, oh, that's that song. Your brain will tell you what song it is. Okay, cool. I've gone over a lot of stuff actually, but what I wanted to do is go over that stuff. I'm probably going to try to wrap it up actually pretty quickly here because I've got some other things to do. But are there any other thoughts or questions? I've recorded this if you want to watch it again. The secret in this course is just to dive in to this note package, read it, make your own notes, definitely watch the videos. Definitely the practice questions that we've got in here as well. But yeah, any other thoughts or questions at this point? Cool, right on. I think in general, when you do that self-test so that so you'll see it here. I can see unit test 1, but if you haven't done the self-test yet, you won't see unit test 1. So once you do the self-test, and it is for marks as well, once you do the self-test, unit 1 test will open, boom, you can do it. And you do it on your own time. The midterm is the one that you book with me. So the midterm. Yeah, you betcha, Matt. Thank you. Yeah, you take care. Yeah, and I'm still going to hang out here, but I'm hoping to wrap it up maybe in a couple minutes. But definitely, if there's any questions, definitely, guys, go ahead, let me know. And earlier at the beginning, I had Cleo here, my cat, just to show a fellow nervous system, right? So our nervous system, if you got a dog or a cat at home, it's almost the same, right? Like the structures in the eye, the structures in the ear, the brain would be different, but they would still have an occipital lobe. They would have a temporal lobe, right? So there's all those similarities. Wanted to ask if there is any specific dates before which I have to complete my midterm. Well, we would suggest, so that's a great question. I mean, in general, depends when you start the course, right? So we say try to get Unit 1 done in 3 weeks. So then Unit 2 in 2 weeks. So that's 5 weeks out, right, from start date. And then Unit 3, another 2. So we're at 7 weeks. So about 7 weeks in, maybe the 8th week approximately would be sort of about the right point, about 8 weeks from your start date. The good thing about the course, if you're a little behind, again, I'm saying in general, I know it's tough. I know you guys got kids and jobs and stuff. I mean, that's why you're taking this course. But if you can, you fit in an hour or 2 a day, you start to chip away at the course pretty good, right? Like you start to really get through it on your own time. And so if you're a little behind, just up your time and do stuff a tiny bit quicker, right? Definitely the course works, I think, is another message I want to send, that, you go through the notes, you go through the reading, you watch the videos, you do the practice questions. The course works. You're going to get a good mark. I won't 100% guarantee that, but you will. I mean, I know, like, you work at it, it's going to happen. I mean, also you're sitting here today with me because you want to get a good mark. So that's also, frankly, that's the right sign. Like, you're here. Okay, yeah, I should check in, see what's going on, and ultimately, yeah, take the message, read through the notes, take your own notes, make some flashcards. It's really cool information. Like, apply it to yourself, apply it to your cat, your dogs, your kids. Tell the cat, tell the dogs, tell the kids what you're learning. It's another good way to learn too, is just to talk about it with others. Any other thoughts? I see Karen and a couple others are typing in, so thanks, Karen. And Akdeep, sorry about pronouncing your name. That's a cool name though. And yeah, I'll probably end the recording here. And just so that those watching recording, here we go.